Welcome back to the Survivor version of Why Blank Lost as we kick things off with our Survivor 47 preview. I'm David Bloomberg, and I'm excited to be joined once again by my co-host, Jessica Lewis.
Hello, everyone. It's been so long since not only I've chatted with David here, but also all of you. So I appreciate all the listeners coming out for season 40 several, right? Here it comes. I'm very excited. So yes, it's good to be back. I've missed you, David, and I've
Yeah,
appreciated your patience with my absence. So thank you.
I've missed you too. But viewers, if you're Big Brother watchers, also,
Mhm.
they haven't had the opportunity to miss me so much because
I know.
I've of course been discussing Big Brother 26 with Ovi Kabir through the summer.
Hmm.
But with Survivor returning this week, I'm going to be pulling double duty for a month or so.
Look at you.
Uh,
You're so dedicated.
so, for those who have watched or listened to us before, welcome back.
Yes.
For any new listeners, once the season starts, each week we'll discuss what every voted out player did right and wrong in terms of rules that I originally wrote way back after the very first Survivor season, otherwise known as, before some of these players were born, and have been updating ever since. Uh, we look at each episode and also back to everything that has led up to it. And we don't just rely on what's on TV, but we also dive into everything that's available that's not a spoiler, including interviews, secret scenes, social media, and whatever else we can get our hands on.
Mm-hmm. David
Now,
digs very deep.
um, now, for this episode, obviously, with it being a preview, we're going to talk about the different players. And, by now, I expect that people have had time to listen to Mike Bloom's interviews here on RHAP or read them
Hmm.
in Parade, plus other information that's going around about the players. So, we're not going to go through and like rehash every little piece of information, and we're not going to get into the little details unless we believe they are specifically pertinent to our analysis. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we will talk briefly about each player and focus as much as possible on things we believe will be important to their game and how we think they'll do with my rules based on those things that they've said. And then at the end, we'll each pick who we think will do the best and the worst. And as a reminder, 3 seasons ago, someone on this podcast got the correct winner prediction.
Oh, okay. Someone meaning David Bloomberg, because everyone knows Jessica never picks the winner unless your name is JT. And it was many, 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 many years ago before I was doing this podcast. So throwing that out there, I actually considered this, okay? When I was trying to prep for all of this and working through all of the
Dartboard,
players. Hmm?
dartboard.
Oh, it wasn't a dartboard. You'll like this even better. I was
Oh,
thinking I should write all of their names on rocks and I should just put them in a bag and stick my hand in the bag and pick one out, and that's the winner, because we also know I'm bad at picking rocks.
okay.
So
Okay. I have to say that would have been good podcast viewing. That would have
I
been,
know. I know
so
it would have been great. I mean, I can make my son do it right now. So then I wouldn't even know what the rocks feel like. I could make Owen do it. Be like, go write all these names on these rocks and bring them down to your mother. And then at the end of the podcast, we can do a grand reveal and I'll stick my hand in a bag of
if
rocks.
you want to do that, and if he'll do that, I think that would be funny.
We could pull
But
this off. We could pull this off.
okay. So
Now I have to get in touch with my son during the podcast.
I know. Uh, well, while
Watch what
Jessica's doing
happens.
that,
I'm
uh,
texting.
yes, while Jessica's doing that, I do want to remind everyone, listeners, and especially any contestants tuning in, remember that we're basing almost everything we'll be discussing off a relatively small amount of information. So if we say it sounds like someone's game will be terrible, I mean, obviously will be 100% right, but there's always the off
Yes.
chance that, we might be wrong, since it is only based on what they happen to say in interviews. Um, so with that said, I also want to mention, I meant to mention this earlier. I said we'll focus on things that are important, specifically to our game. I have to be honest, there's also things in here that are important to us personally, like when people,
Mm-hmm.
have hot takes that completely agree with us. Yeah, we're going to
Yes.
mention that. That's a good way to get mentioned on this podcast. So, and there's a number of people like that. All right.
Yes.
So let's get started. We're going to go
My son
through.
wants to know if he's going to be on camera.
Well, that's up to him. That is up to him. He can
I
duck
will tell
down.
him.
Yeah. Uh, we're going to go through each tribe alphabetically by first name.
Yes.
The tribe alphabetically and then the first name alphabetically. So we will begin with the Gada tribe. And Andy, who is 31, an AI research assistant from your neck of the woods, sort of, Buffalo, New York, now in Boston. I think Buffalo is near you.
Buffalo is probably like 2.5 hours
Okay.
away.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Not
not
so
very
near you.
close. Yeah,
Uh,
not so near me.
and now further, he's in Boston. He is a longtime and well-known RHAP patron. So right off the bat, we're starting with one there. We've got a lot of RHAP connections in this group. Uh, one of those, of course, is Asia. Now, we haven't gotten to her yet. We will, but I think, just as a little bit of a preview, I think almost everyone listening knows she's an RHAP podcaster who is also on the season. And Andy obviously knows a lot about her. He said, if I ever get a chance to link up with her, I'm definitely down to work with her deep into the game. And this is great to hear because I keep wanting to see an RHAP alliance. I'd rather
I
see,
agree, and I'm
yeah,
not ignoring you. I'm just chatting with Owen for 2
no,
seconds. So you take off on this.
I would rather see a specific Y blank lost alliance. And there have been a couple of times when there were enough players in a single place who listened to this podcast and, that they could have done it, but they didn't tell each other. They didn't want to reveal that information. So we need to come up with a super secret Y blank lost password. So, if anyone has any good ideas, let me know and we'll tell future players they can drop that into conversation. And, so it'll be like, oh, before I came out here, I went on a balloon ride. And someone could say, oh, I went on a balloon ride too. I don't know why I came up with balloon ride, but that's
Yeah,
why I
I was
said,
just gonna ask you, like, why are we talking about a balloon ride? I'm a little distracted at the moment
yeah,
because now I'm dealing with,
we're looking for
this.
code phrases for Y
Oh,
blank
yeah.
lost listeners,
R
better
Oh,
than the
okay.
ones that Survivor came up with. We're not going to have them talk about a rabbit eating in a mailbox or
Yeah, no,
something.
that was quite silly, and
Yeah.
I will say that I know that was something. I know we're not talking about her yet, but I don't love the phrases. We've already kind of addressed that
Yeah.
and been through that previously when they were talking about them. So that was one of those things where I was like, "Nah, no."
No,
I
these
mean,
are
I
our
understand.
phrases, though. These are for
Our
us.
and that's fine. If it's just
Yeah.
phrases to support us, that's great. But phrases like as part of the game, no. But we'll get to
Yeah.
her. We'll definitely get to her. But yes, I do think it's very fascinating to know that, like, how her perception is going to be, and the fact that Andy was like, I'm into it, like,
Yes.
and and it's very interesting because one of the components of Survivor that makes it difficult is you're walking into this game playing with complete strangers, people you know nothing about.
Mhm.
And Andy's like, "I know, like, 10 things about her. I know she
Yeah.
loves dogs." And like, all like, and he's ticking off all these things, and it's like he's got a leg up almost on all of the things he knows about her because she doesn't know any of those things about him. So it's a very interesting place to find yourself
Mhm.
in, but I do love that he wants to, like, kind of use it to his advantage in that way, but I just thought that was quite fascinating. She's coming in as a known as opposed to an unknown, and that
Yes.
could certainly affect her game, but we'll
Yes.
get to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Andy, of course, prepared by listening to RHAP podcasts, whether it was,
Yes.
officially preparing or, just what he normally does. Beyond that, he studied puzzles and became good at fire making and also researched challenge hacks and even worked on his grip strength before Charlie mentioned it last season. As he told
Mhm.
Mike Bloom, any edge you can get. Uh,
Yes.
Andy says he'll try to play like Omer, who he says demonstrated the optimal blueprint for a good new era game in terms of prioritizing social capital,
Mm.
information, and options in a way that keeps a lower threat level. So rules 1, 5, and 6, boom, all at once.
Yes, very good. Mhm.
I liked Andy's answer to the question of what he would value in an alliance partner because he was completely honest in a way that we've discussed here before. That is, of course, everyone should want an alliance partner who is, as he said, not willing to win at all costs and that is susceptible to true loyalty. I need this person to want to take me to the end, even if they're not sure they can beat me. There can either be some moral compass they bring to in the game or because they just love me that much. It's
Yeah.
kind of like if someone asked, how would you like to get $1 million? The real answer is, just hand it to me right now.
Mm,
You know,
mhm, sure.
and it's not likely, but if someone asked me, okay. And same with him. It's not likely he's going to find someone like that, but that was the question. So,
Yeah.
hey, shoot for the stars with that.
Well, and I do think that he seems to have, like, a good overall, vibe about him, because if you
Yes.
remember back when they were doing the pregame for the last season, because he was the alternate, I believe, for last
No,
season. He wasn't one of the
no,
alternates?
no.
Then who was the alternate for the last
I don't think
season?
so. Did I get that wrong? He made
I
it to the final round.
maybe that's what it was.
Yeah,
There
he
there
made it to
seemed
the final round.
yes, but there seemed to be, like, I think that he certainly has, he has, again, that same familiarity. He's kind of been through this
Mhm.
process, which, I think can also help him because, again, there's an unknown factor to all of this, right?
Right.
When you're going into the game and you don't know what you're doing. So, he's already been through that part as well. So, it's interesting to see if that's going to have any effect. I do find it fascinating that there's a lot of players who have kind of, like, been through the process and made it so far, but then
Mhm.
didn't get the final call. So, you end up having more of an understanding of what they're kind of looking for because you've been through it. So, I'm curious to see if that's going to end up enabling him to affect his overthinking, right? Because that's
Yeah.
one of the concerns he has. He's an overthinker. So is he going to get caught up in his own head with the game mechanics and things that he thinks he knows, the things that he thinks he's learned, the facts that he knows some people? I hope he doesn't get caught up in his own head with all of those parts of the game.
Yeah, you mentioned, that a lot of the people this season have been through the casting process multiple times. To me, that's encouragement to anyone who has applied and been rejected. Like,
Mm.
keep going. You know, it
Oh, for
it it's
sure. Yes.
it does happen. As far as his overthinking, I mean, I know the feeling. But on Survivor, he said he needs to realize that and take deep breaths and trust his instincts.
Mhm.
Uh, like I said, I know the feeling. It isn't easy. But he thinks he has the ability to charm and disarm people, and that he's just confident being himself. He hasn't met anyone in his adult life who's disliked him. Although there
That's
is,
fascinating.
yeah, I know. Um,
Like, maybe
I've
you're
met
just
plenty of people.
blissfully
I mean,
unaware.
I mean, I'm, I'm. How old is he? I'm more than. I'm not. I'm almost twice his age, and I met plenty of people who, more than twice as many people who don't like me. I know that's hard to
That's
believe.
a big claim to make that
Yes.
you've lived your whole life and you've never met someone who doesn't like you. Are you blissfully unaware, or are you really just the most likable person ever?
Yeah.
Because I find it incredibly fascinating that you've
Well,
never met one person that doesn't like
and
you.
there's already one person on this cast, a fellow RHAP super fan, who doesn't like him based on their impressions.
Perception, yeah.
Yes, so
Yes,
we'll
so
see.
don't always assume because you know what they say about assume.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Uh,
interesting. That's an interesting
yeah.
little side note.
In terms of Rule 7, Andy said the real advantage isn't so much an idol itself, but in knowing where the advantages are. And that gives
Mhm.
you power to do what you want with having the target on your back. And I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yes.
Uh, so, yeah, I, of course, like Andy, I don't believe I've personally interacted with him, though I have heard him on a number of different patron call-in shows.
Mm,
Uh, so I have high hopes for him. I think he has a good chance of doing very well.
I agree, and he does come into the game with some solid understanding of this world that I've talked about, this underbelly kind of world that exists where people pick things apart like we do,
I don't know
and
that we're an underbelly. I mean, that makes it sound terrible, like we're, you know,
I will
dealing
say this.
strategic tips, under the
No, I
table
know,
or
I know.
what,
I had no idea that there was such an intense,
Yes.
like, podcasting like world that existed, and all of these platforms for discussing Survivor. Even when I went out there, it was one of those things where you're like, oh wow, I had no idea. And
Mhm.
he does. And so I'm curious again if that's going to help him. But it seems to be a theme that we are seeing
Yes.
more and more of, that there is this direct involvement in this world and in this group and with these platforms. And so I have high hopes for him as well,
Mhm.
except we do have that one issue where someone on his tribe might not like him. So we'll see.
Yes. Well, I think they're on a different tribe, which is good.
Oh, wait a second. All right, I'll
Um,
have to look at my I have
yeah,
notes, lots of
good.
notes.
Yes. All right, we can move on to Annika. Uh, she is 26, a marketing manager from California, and she is one of the people who started watching Survivor during the beginning of COVID.
Mhm.
I have to tell you, I don't feel like I got a ton out of Annika's interview and info. Um, and so that makes it a little difficult. She said she
Yeah.
will make alliances based on her gut feelings and intuition, but also wants to align with someone willing to information, which I mean, yeah, it's not much of an alliance if you don't share information at the very least. Uh,
Mhm.
she thinks her experience being a project manager will help because she's learned very well how to analyze different personality types and can tailor her communication styles to each one of them. To me, that sounds like something that may work on paper, but perhaps not in real life. It
Yeah.
it could just be I haven't had the greatest experiences with project managers, but I also hear that term bandied about in, I don't want to say, I don't want to lump all project managers together. My former associate editor on my website was a project manager and she was great,
Mm.
you
Mhm.
know. Um I just, hear stories from my sons about project managers and so I don't know. I also feel like we've had that before where on the show, we've had project managers who thought that their skills would translate and
Right.
didn't. I can't pinpoint
Well,
anyone. Don't quiz me.
oh, I won't quiz you because I wouldn't remember either.
Well, I
But
meant
I will
for
say
this.
that the one of the concerns that we've referenced a lot on this podcast is those best laid plans don't always work
Yeah.
out when you come in to play the game, because you have to be able to adapt to what is happening around you
Mhm.
and to the people that are on your tribe. So you can come in and think, and she describes herself literally as a planner. And she is the person who would lead the charge. And if your group project, that could certainly not bode well if the people around her don't
Mhm.
appreciate that. Maybe they don't want a leader. Maybe they don't want someone to plan everything out. But then someone might throw her under the bus and go, "Yeah, go ahead." So then the focus point will be on her as opposed to them, and they'll let her take the fall for things. So I do think that she needs to be more aware of the effect that that could have. She thinks it's going to be positive. It could definitely be a negative, just as you described. So that definitely is something that I'm worried about for her as well, that she just might come across as I like too interested in leading the charge and too interested in telling people what to do because she thinks that's a positive.
Right.
Might not be. Might not
Yeah.
be.
She also mentioned she knows she can have an expressive face and needs to watch it so she doesn't show when she's annoyed or doesn't like something,
Mhm.
which, yeah, that's true. Now, her hot take isn't very hot, but does go along with what we say every season, which is that people are too hesitant to play their idols. Of course, all of them went out there to film, near the middle end of season 46, right during the run of people being voted out with an idol in their pocket. So
Mhm.
it's top of mind for all of them.
Yes, it
And,
is for
and they didn't
sure.
even see the full extent of it. But she could have still been quoting us when she said, I think that if you have any inclination, any at all, that you are the target, there's no harm in playing your idol because it is worse to go home with it as a souvenir.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed, they don't even let you take it home as a souvenir anymore. That mean
I
old Jeff
know.
Probst.
That's so
Yeah.
awful. You should get to if it's in your
Yeah.
pocket.
Overall, like I said, I don't have much of a feel for how she will play. So I
Yeah.
can't even really suggest what rules she'll do well in. I have a bad feeling she may go out early.
Well, but here's the interesting part about her as well too, though, is that she was kind of taken by what who I believe is Rachel, because she described her as RL. and Rachel is on her tribe. So I don't know if maybe they would end up hitting things off. And she also mentioned Sam as well because she was talking about SP.
Mm-hmm.
She thinks Sam's got a little bit of a red flag. So I don't know again if that's going to, because again, if she's coming in with ideas
Right.
and plans, it might work for her, it might not. But I didn't. We'll get to Rachel as well. I don't know if they'll end up jiving or not, but
Well, even if they do, I little spoiler alert for when we get to Rachel. I don't have a great feel about Rachel either.
I don't
So
either. I would spoiler alert as well. So
yeah.
like, I totally agree that I have some concerns with her just in the perception of yourself is not necessarily the perception that other people will always
Right.
have of you, and I appreciate that I think it's actually John who we're going to be talking about next
Mm-hmm.
was talking about how his like strength and his kryptonite are basically one and the same, and I appreciate that kind of understanding of who you are when you're coming in to play a game like this, because you can realize the negative and the positive, and I don't know if Annika really necessarily sees it that way,
Mm-hmm.
and so but we'll see. We'll see,
Yeah.
Frank.
Well, let's go ahead and move to John. He
Okay.
is, of course, John Lovett. He's the only, well, maybe the only last name we'll mention because it's known. He's 41. He's a podcast host in LA. He is, of course, the most famous participant in Survivor 47, being a former presidential speechwriter and TV writer, current host for a major political/comedy podcast. But until now, he had always kept his Survivor fandom secret because
Mhm.
he wanted to catch up on old seasons without being spoiled, which I
I
think
know,
is
that's
hilarious.
incredible.
I think that's
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah.
Uh, he
That's
does
dedication right there.
right. He does not plan to lie about who he is, which is smart because I think it would be way too easy for him to be recognized. Uh,
Mhm.
he said he'll just tell people he's had success in podcasting, and if someone knows the show, he'll say, oh, that's exciting. He also said podcasting is the most embarrassing job in the world, which I have to take some offense to there, John. Uh,
I'm so embarrassed.
uh, now, discussing his own personality, John told Mike Bloom that he has an intensity that can be persuasive and charismatic and can bring people along, but also has the possibility of turning people off and pushing them away.
Mhm.
But he doesn't want to not be himself. So he's just, thinking about how to put forth the better version of him.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, like, I really
Yeah.
love that he's recognizing that about himself, and he has kind of this, like there's a calming air about him, like, when he
Hmm.
speaks, which is probably coming from the podcasting component.
Yeah.
And I think that that would certainly work well for him in this environment, because if you know how to communicate, then you're going to be better at this game.
Hmm.
Period. I just really truly believe that it comes down to communication. And if he's willing to think those things through and which way he needs to actually interact with the people in his tribe, I think that that's going to bode very well for him. Oh, it needs to be a bag that I can't see through.
Thinking about
All right.
Sorry. So we're back to the bag. But
Yes.
anyway, I will say that there was one comment that he made that if I'm going to make a t-shirt to
Hmm.
represent this whole group of people, he's the winner, because it says regarding making a fire at Final Four. In war, nobody fights an extra battle to prove they are good
Yes.
at war.
Yes.
Like, this is amazing. That needs to be put on
Well,
a
yeah,
t-shirt. That's
it's
incredible.
it's funny that he has not dug into Survivor social media in his quest to remain unspoiled, because that hot take could have come right from us.
Yes.
But yes, that example was even better than anything we've done
Oh,
when
I
we've
I
talked
was
about it.
I was like, I almost
Um,
got chills when I heard that. I'm like, "That's beautiful."
and of
So,
course, it relates to, he said, to add to that, he said this idea that you have to make big moves, you have to build your resume up to and including people say, oh, I may put myself in fire to prove that I deserve it. Then he said that. And then he said, it's not strategy, it's the theater of strategy. To put on the show for a jury, uh, it feels performative. And
yes.
so, I mean, it's true that, a lot of the jury in front of the jury is performative. So, um, but yes, I like that he said that. Um,
Yes.
and the other thing that he had interesting thoughts about in terms of the game itself, uh, he noted it's important to have some kind of strategic thinking about how you're going to approach this game. But in the end, I do think this game is won or lost by how people play against themselves, how they manage their frustrations, their annoyances, their insecurities, their
Mhm.
paranoias, their hopes, their expectations, when they're hungry, when they're tired, when they haven't spoken to a person they can truly trust in weeks. And how to make sure when you're in that state, you aren't losing touch with your feelings about the game or other players. So you've
Mhm.
obviously been there. What do you think of that?
I think that's spot on. Because you have to spend so much time doing self-reflection when you're out there, because someone could be doing something that is annoying you to no end, but you have to minimize it, you can't talk about it because you're like, "That person's working with me, so I can't make a big deal about this." Someone could say something that you would normally find offensive and you might want to respond to, but you realize in this moment, in this game, not important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting that aside just as your rules, keep politics out of the game kind of thing, right?
Yes.
So I think that is such an incredible idea that he is going into this game with and understanding that, because you can only play this game if you understand yourself and understand how other people are going to perceive you, and also understand how you acting with this person, or uh, interacting with them,
Mm-hmm.
how they're going to respond. I think that is 100% accurate. I feel very good about John.
Yes.
He just seems to have such a deeper level of thinking about this game than we normally see. It's not like I crammed all the episodes and I've seen everything and I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you, it is more it's a deeper level, and I appreciate that, and I'm hoping that he's able to show the world that this is what you need to do to play this game, is you have to be thinking about it in a different level, and I feel very good about John.
Yeah, I agree. I think he has the smarts and skills to do well in multiple rules, such as 1 in 5 in particular. The one thing I worry about is if people recognize him, he could be deemed as a threat pretty quickly.
Yes, and that is definitely a concern for sure.
All right, we'll move on to Rachel, who is 34 and a graphic designer in Michigan. She found Survivor in 2017, but since then has even gone so far as to watch South African Survivor. Uh,
Mhm.
she was an alternate last season.
Yes, I
Um,
did. I have that as a note, previous
yes.
alternate.
Uh, but as I indicated earlier, she was another one I just didn't get a feel for her much out of her interviews.
Yeah,
One
I was very
example,
like, "Hmm,
yeah, I'm glad it's
yeah.
not just me. One
No, it's
example
not just you."
was the question of why she'll be the winner, and she started right off by talking about reading the jury to get their votes. And to me, that's
Yeah.
putting the cart before the horse. First,
Yeah,
you have to get there. I mean, she's right.
right.
That is important with Appendix B, but it's not what I would lead off with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's yes, I agree. There's definitely there was just kind of like a she left me wanting when I was listening to her speak and
mhm,
talk about the game. I was just kind of like, okay." Like I wasn't feeling inspired
mhm.
with the responses, and so I don't know if she's I I just don't know if she's gonna bring what she needs to, because there are some people in this cast that are very much like they're gonna grab your attention,
Yeah.
but also there's something to be said about those players that aren't getting all of the attention and are just kind of sneaking through, and maybe she'll be one of those people that will be able to just kind of be in the background a little bit, because she doesn't seem to be hyping herself up so much, but then it also kind of leaves me wanting and wondering. So I feel you as well on her, that I was left a little bit curious how she was going to end up doing. But if
Well well,
if she and Annika hook up, that could definitely work
yeah,
out
I
well for
mean,
both of them.
one thing is you said, maybe she'll be in the back, and then she talked about that, she feels like, she wants to be the middle person in terms of physicality and brains and social game. She's not the
Mhm.
best, she's not the worst, she's,
Right.
so maybe she started with the interview, she's just kind of,
She's just
waiting
there.
for other people to grab the attention and then they can go out and she can jump in. But
Yeah.
it makes it difficult for us to figure out,
Oh,
how
for
dare
sure.
she?
Yeah.
How dare she? Uh,
Right. Come on. We need to be able to do our job.
yeah. Now,
But there is that is a great approach. If you
yeah,
go in not wanting to be the center of attention, that's not a bad thing.
right.
Not a bad thing.
Now, a more interesting part. is her thought about potential downsides because she says she can be a bit controlling, not in a bossy way, just wanting to know what's going on, having her finger in every pie.
Yeah.
If she can tamp that down a bit, it's actually a good way to follow the third rule about being flexible because a key to that is knowing what's going on so you can move with it. So
This is fantastic for
harness that.
Annika.
Yes.
Yes, because Annika could do all the planning, and then Rachel can just know what's going on, but then Annika can get
Yeah,
everything put onto her.
great.
See? We're figuring it all out for
That's
them.
great. Now, she may have indicated a true negative in her discussion of what she wants in an ally because she said, someone that will not be intimidated by my sort of rapid fire way of thinking. Ideally, someone that takes my word vomit and parses it back and can balance out my overreactive brain. Now, that's all a bit worrisome to me. The correct thing for
Yeah.
her to do is recognize that she has this word vomit thing going on and
Yeah.
try to contain it,
Yeah.
not
Don't do
necessarily
that.
attempting to find someone who can deal with it, because I think that's a lot less likely.
Yes, and this brings us back to John, where John's recognizing like, I have this thing about myself. I have
Yeah.
to make sure that I don't let it negatively affect my ability to play this game." Whereas Rachel's approach is, I need to find someone who can accept me for me and who I am, and I'm not going to change anything about myself to play this game. And that approach can definitely not bode well for you.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I indicated before I worry about Rachel early, especially
Mhm.
if the Gata tribe loses a couple times in pre-merge. If
Yeah.
that happens, I don't think she'll make it to merge.
Yeah. I'm not feeling too high on Rachel either myself.
Yeah.
The
All
rocks
right.
will decide though. I
Yes,
mean,
that's right. That's right. Um, all right. We will move on to Sam. He is 24, a sports reporter, originally from Schaumburg, Illinois, which is a Chicago suburb about half an hour west of where I grew up. And now he is in Nashville, Tennessee, covering the Titans. It's funny because the first football game of the season for the Bears was against the Titans. And he,
that's
according to his Twitter, he was in Chicago for it, which would make sense if he, reports on the team. I
mhm.
would presume, maybe this is too much of a presumption, but I would presume he's originally a Bears fan. So that must have been interesting to write about it from a Titans perspective for him. But in any
I'm
case,
not gonna pretend to know all of these
okay.
teams. I'll let you talk about that.
Uh, I root for my Chicagoans. So
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
course I'm going to be on Sam's side. Plus, when I checked, he was already following me on Twitter. So that's a bonus point as well. Um,
That's
Another bonus point is he said he's a day one fan. Although I
yes.
did some math on that.
He's 24.
Exactly. I'm not sure how that could be the case. The math ain't
So I was like,
mathing there.
"Timeout."
Yeah. So maybe he means it was like from his own day one. Um, because he said when he was young, he would basically play Survivor with other kids, doing challenges in his backyard, voting
He's an
each other
Adam
out.
Klein.
Yeah, and he would be Jeff even in that. So
Yeah, so he's an Adam Klein.
yeah,
I can appreciate that about him. He's got the personality for it. I mean, he's definitely there's something about him that's very captivating when he talks, and so I can see that. But yeah, you're
yeah,
24. You're
right.
24. Day one fan. Come on.
These
Youngin.
rules are as old as you are.
I know these young kids. Damn these young kids. I can't believe I have to say that now. It's
Yeah.
so terrible. Oh my god.
Now, Sam
Anyway.
thinks his experience working with athletes will help because it's like being a professional ego stroker, making people feel good, building
Oh
relationships, get
yeah.
information from
Yeah.
them, and capitalizing on it. He also
Mhm.
thinks he can fit in with a lot of different groups because while he played sports growing up, he was also a theater kid and in Scholastic Bowl.
Mhm.
So he hung out with a lot of different groups that didn't normally necessarily overlap.
There seems to be a lot of sports related people on this cast,
Hmm.
like, that have jobs that are like, wow, here's another one. This one's a broadcaster for this one does and
Hmm.
so I don't know if they're going to end up connecting. I don't think that there's no one on his tribe, but if he ends up making the merge and then people
Right.
start talking about the professions, that might be a connection for quite a few of them. I was quite surprised that we did have that. But I do appreciate that analogy that he came up with is that he has to figure out the best way to speak to these players in order to
Right.
get what he wants, and I think bringing that into the game will certainly help him for sure.
Yeah. Now, one thing he says he needs to watch out for in himself is that he's very competitive in a way that can make him upset and act out in times in moments of weakness, like getting mad that someone cost them a challenge or somebody not doing what he
Yeah,
wants them to do.
that's not
He
good.
knows he has to remember it's a long game and it's not worth making a big deal about. Of course, that's a lot easier sitting with a full belly, when you've had a night's sleep.
Mhm.
But his comment about it being a long game also plays into other thoughts that align with a lot of things we have said, which includes not playing the game too fast by turning on number ones too early.
Mhm.
He has correctly understood that, quote, the new era has told us it's all about finding a place to hide for as long as possible. And right when people see the light at the end of the tunnel, you need to be that light, and you're the freight train. Uh, I want to keep my allies for as long as possible. I want to stay insulated for as long as possible. I want to make sure that if I'm making that move, it's in a spot where I don't have to survive four more tribal councils on immunity wins and idols and sheer luck just to get to the end of the game. I want to do it when they realize, oh, Sam just made a big ballsy move, and now we can't get him because it's too late and he's going to win the game. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if
That's a big, like, wow, like, that's setting himself up for a really big game if he's able to pull that off.
Right, right. And, all of those go along with things that we have, said here repeatedly,
Mhm.
about not making moves too early, about criticizing people for turning on their number ones too soon,
Yep.
all those things. So if he can stick to those, I have high hopes for him because,
Yeah.
he could do well in almost all the rules because all of that relates in one way or another to them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And of course, if you can do well in all the rules, that bodes well for your game overall.
Yes, and I think too that his physical strength is going to be important at the beginning of this game as well, just because the tribes are so small. So I think Sam is going to find himself in a very good place
Mhm.
from the start. And if he does make the merge, and if those other individuals who are also situated similarly to him, both in their careers and also their physical strength, there might be a little bit of an alliance that could be formed just based upon those
Mhm.
qualities. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think he's gonna make the merge and then what happens at the merge.
Okay. All right.
But the rocks will determine.
Yes. All right, and the last person on this tribe is Sierra. She
Yes.
is 27, a nurse originally from Delaware, now Pennsylvania. She was a broadcast journalist, became a nurse. She also won Miss Delaware. She made it to a pre-live show round of American Idol. She's done a lot. She
Yeah.
believes she was born for Survivor, and she started watching when she was 4 years old, fell out of it in college, and got back to it when COVID hit. Now, I have to tell you, I don't know how people remember what they were watching on TV at the age of 4. For me, it was probably Sesame Street. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, but okay, maybe they do. Must have left an impression.
Well,
Uh,
Sam remembers. He was a day one fan.
Day one, he remembers, just boom, the
Here
day he
comes
was
Borneo.
born. Yeah, that the day he was borneo. Yes, exactly.
Day one fan.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Sierra definitely seems like someone who is incredibly impressive just as a human being overall. You've ticked off the list of things that she's done.
right.
And it's really kind of incredible to be like, and now she's a nurse. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to do all of these incredible, crazy things and I'm going to be a nurse. And I
Yeah.
really do appreciate that about her that she's like, she's also humble because not that being a nurse is, I mean, it's a great profession, but it's like you go on to all of these like American Idol, all of these
Mhm.
things, and it's like she's not about stardom. She's about finding what she loves doing and what she really wants to do and going for it. And I think
Mhm.
that's incredible that she's been continuing to do that through her life and has led her to where she is. And now she's doing Survivor. So, like, she's just one of those people that's very captivating because I could just imagine sitting talking to her going, "Wait, you did that too? Wait, what? No, now you're
Yeah.
doing that? Wait a second. You like bring me through all of these permutations of your life and how you ended up where you are at." So
Mhm.
I think that she is someone who is impressive and I'm hoping that she's able to minimize that a bit though because you don't want to be a threat by being too much,
Yeah.
right? And having too many great qualities because if you have too many great qualities, then people might not wanna play the game with you, but I found her to be very impressive and very enjoyable.
Yeah. That said, To me, I felt like she gave me the least of anyone in terms of things to strategically analyze.
Oh, for sure. I
Like,
agree. Mhm.
even her answer to what she'd value in an alliance partner focused on laughter and a good time.
Yeah.
One thing she did focus on was confidence in her intuition and her ability to read people, both of which she said don't lead her wrong. For example, she told Mike, I'm writing down all these nonverbal cues. I could probably tell you somebody's story based off of what I've learned. So it's time for me to get back on my soapbox here because one of the most overused and incorrect ideas in all of reality TV is the concept that you can read people in this way.
Oh, I know, right?
Lots of people
Yeah.
believe they can do it. Almost
Yeah.
nobody actually can with any level of accuracy, other than like Sam talked about being able to read football players and know when the time was to go ask a question. Well, yeah, he also added in if the quarterback, threw 2 interceptions, is now the time to ask him. Well, that's a lot easier to read than, like she said, knowing their whole story based on physical tells or something. Um,
Yeah. And
eh,
people also go on to this show and lie
Right. And
all
well,
over
but
the
people
place.
think that they can tell that.
No,
And
I know.
I've talked a lot about this on traders podcasts, and even on like this season of Big Brother, it came up. There was a player, Tucker, who was like, "I had special CIA training. I know how to read people." And as he's
Mhm.
saying this, he's insisting to the woman he's talking to that she has a special power, and this is how he knows, and she didn't have a special power. So
Mm.
right there was a
Yeah.
perfect example.
Yeah.
Um, I, she thinks she's picking up on all these things. She's taking notes. But the funny thing is, other people commented on how her note taking was suspicious and made them wonder about her.
Mhm.
So eh, she needed to concentrate more on how she was looking to others in that regard.
Yeah, and she does talk too though about how other people are going to perceive her. So she is at least, even though she has this idea that she can read people, she's hoping that people see her as gullible. So I don't know if she's
Yeah, but
recognizing
I,
that
I,
part of it.
I don't know that they'll see her as gullible as she said, a stupid smiley blonde. Her words, not mine. Um,
Mm,
but if they see you going around taking notes at everyone you look at, they're not
right.
getting the impression that you're a dumb
That you're
blonde. They're getting the
exactly.
impression, ooh, she's really studying me. I need to be worried about her.
Yes, and
Um,
I think was it somebody did mention specifically, and I don't know if it was
yeah, I don't
Sam.
remember who it was,
But
but
yeah, that
yeah.
she was definitely going around taking
Hmm.
notes, and yeah, so if and I do think that this is that, the whole pregame, we hear so many people talking about, like, everything you're doing, people are paying attention to, so if you want to be perceived a particular way, you
Right.
have to be mindful of that in pregame as well,
Hmm.
and if that is what people are making note of her, then they likely aren't going to perceive her that way coming into the game for sure.
Yeah. Now, I like I said, I worry a bit about her pregame ideas, but I think she'll have more to give in the game than a couple others on this tribe. So I don't
Yes.
think she'll be one of the first two people out. Um, so, there's at least that. Um,
Yes.
which leads us to the prediction for this tribe. Of course, I think Andy and Sam will do well, in part because of what they said, in part because of their physicality. And I pretty much already mentioned who I believe I think will be going out early, which would be Annika or Rachel or both.
Yeah, I'm not feeling good. I from the start, from just when I was reviewing everything initially, there was just something about Rachel that I was like,
Hmm.
I don't feel that she's going to do that well. So I definitely have my concerns with Rachel. I didn't get much from Annika either. But I do think that Rachel is likely going to be in a tough spot. I yes, I agree with the
Hmm.
assessment on this tribe as well.
Okay. Well, we could move to the Lavo tribe.
And then
They
when
will,
I do my rocks and I pick Rachel as a winner, then
yeah,
it is
yeah,
what it is, right?
yeah. And we start off with Asia. She is 32, an IT consultant in Houston. Uh, but come on, IT
Let's just get
consultant.
to it.
Yeah, we know her as an RHAP podcaster. Uh,
Yes.
she has watched Survivor since she was 12, obviously knows quite a lot about it and other reality shows. She
Mhm.
identifies most with Suri because of her ability to use her personality to connect with so many different kinds of people. And Asia plans to form relationships to make sure people genuinely like her without thinking it's strategy.
Yeah.
Plus, Asia herself is clearly intelligent and strategic, but also has a physicality because she said she's played basketball her whole life. And she even lost 10 pounds of fat and gained 5 pounds of muscle by strength training in preparation. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I like what she said, especially about having a social game strategy, but wanting to make sure people don't think of it as a strategy. Um, that it's just building relationships.
Sure.
In other words, she'll follow Rule 5, but she'll pretend to be nice without pretending, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
No, it does. It makes perfect sense because
Mhm.
one of her biggest components of life is getting to know people
Right.
and learning about people. She and clearly she's doing the podcasting, she's forming relationships with people when she's doing these podcasts
Mhm.
and meeting new podcasters and meeting new people just even on planes, I think she mentioned.
Yes.
So I think for her, she's genuinely interested in people, which I think will come across when she's meeting new people on her tribe, that it's not necessarily going to be tied to just being strategic. It's who she is.
Mhm.
She is fascinated by learning as much as she can, and I think that having that piece to yourself to come in and play this game is huge. I don't necessarily share that same type of belief. I'd like to
Yeah,
try
I'm
to get
not
to know
getting on a
people,
plane,
but
striking up a conversation with people. I'm getting on a plane, putting in earbuds and being like,
yeah,
"Leave me alone."
right. Stay away from me. I'm
Yeah.
good. Thank you. I've got my own thing going on over here. I don't need to be troubled or bothered. And if the person next to me starts talking, I'm like, I will be cordial and
Mhm.
kind, but I'm not interested in having a 3-hour conversation with anyone on a plane. She wants to do that. And I
Yeah.
think if you are able to do that in your real world and your real life, it's certainly going to be very easy for you to do it out on an island when there's nothing else. No one's going to have earbuds in, right? Everybody
Yeah.
is going to be in a situation where they can chat. And so I think that that part of her game is going to be very successful, just getting to know people. And I'm hoping that it doesn't end up working against her, because if she is just so likable and if she comes across so well socially, it might make people concerned about her getting through to the end.
Yeah. And in that regard, in a similar place, one area where I think she was, maybe kidding herself a little bit was she said she believed she would be underestimated.
Yeah, no, I don't
Uh,
think so.
but she had to know that at least a few people were going to recognize her as they have. So I
Yeah,
think at least those people will appropriately estimate what she can do.
yeah,
And there may be more who eventually realize who she is, even if they don't know her right off the bat, or as they get to know her, they're not going to underestimate her, much like you just said.
yeah.
That could all be dangerous for her. The good part is that those who have identified her from the start indicated they want to work with her, not against her.
Mhm. Yes.
The RHAP alliance I mentioned earlier. Though, as I say that, it is kind of funny. Like, if you were out there and you recognized Asia, and then you had to do an interview with Mike Bloom, wouldn't there be just the tiniest inkling in the back of your head that if you were thinking, I need to get her out because she's a threat? I don't know that you would fully trust. I mean, Mike Bloom is an absolutely objective journalist, but
Mhm.
in the back of your head, wouldn't you be like, I don't know that I'm going to tell her friend that I'm targeting her?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
maybe I'll keep that part to myself.
And that's
Um,
that is a very fair point, because it is, because Mike Bloom could have then restructured his questions and been a
which
little
which he
less,
wouldn't,
he
but
wouldn't, but it's a thing.
it's kind of like some people go on Big Brother and they're like, "Well, I'm not even gonna tell the diary room what I'm thinking because then they could, tell
Mhm.
someone else." Well, they're not going to. They might ask questions of another person, but they're not gonna
Right,
tell
right.
them. So, it
Well, I do think that one of the players, though, that recognized her brought up an interesting point, and it was, I don't wanna tell anyone that I
right.
recognize her as an
Mhm.
RHAP podcaster, because then they're going to know how deep I'm
Right.
into the Survivor
Yes.
underground or underbelly, whatever you wanna call it, right? So
We are not
so
an
I
underbelly.
So I just thought that that was an interesting take on it too, right? So it's almost like, I know your secret, but I'm not going to tell
Right.
anyone.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that's going to play out. If someone's going to try to pull that off, like, oh, hey, Asia, listen, I know who
Yeah.
you are, but just secret's safe with me. I because then does she believe them that they're not going to say anything? I don't. It'll be all very interesting
I mean,
to
we had that happen last season on Big Brother
right.
when Izzy recognized Cerie's son immediately and within minutes pulled him aside and said, I know who you are. I know who your mom is. I want to work with you. I will not tell a soul. And they
Right.
became the tightest of allies. She was basically adopted into the family. So yeah. Now, one thing that I particularly like about Asia's attitude is that unlike some super fans who may come in thinking they know and can control everything, she has the self-awareness to realize you can know a lot, and quote, still fall flat on your face. And that's why she isn't leaning on that aspect of things for her game and is instead, as we discussed, focusing on social relationships because she knows she's good at those. But she also noted that when she gets to final tribal council, quote, I will be able to clearly articulate my strategy to get there. So, totally in accordance with Appendix B.
Yes.
Um, Now, much like I discussed with Andy, I also had to laugh when Asia said she will value blind loyalty in an ally because, of course, she would. Who wouldn't? Uh, but more seriously, she added that too many people lately have been blindsided by their ally, so she wants one who is too loyal to even consider betrayal. I wish her the best of luck with that, though I suppose it could work maybe if the RHAP alliance gets together.
I love that there's this potential for an RHAP
Yes.
alliance. I love that.
So it should be no surprise that I think Asia will do very well this season.
Yes, I think she will do very well. I agree.
All right, next up is uh, Genevieve,
Mhm.
who I thought I had heard someone refer to as Jenny at one point, but now I can't find that. So
Mm,
for now, I'll just call her by her
we'll go
full
with
name.
Genevieve.
And she is 33, a corporate lawyer in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Uh, She began watching the show when she was a preteen, though she calls it casually watching rather than being a super fan, and has been applying since Canadians were allowed to 5 or 6 years ago.
Mhm.
Uh, she won't be telling anyone she's a lawyer because of what's been happening recently with your profession out there. Uh,
I know. It's taken
but
over.
even as close to the game as doing her interview with Mike Bloom, she still hadn't come up with a solid cover story yet.
Right? Like, I saw that and I'm like, "That's not good.
No.
That's a really bad approach to take." You need to have that locked in
Yeah.
before you walk out there. If you're gonna lie, "Hi, did it. Lied about my profession."
Mhm.
You need to have that all, like, set and done and ready to go. You can't be in pregame going, "Nah, I haven't really decided yet. I've got some
Yeah,
options."
otherwise
That's
you
not
end up with a story like, Josh the doctor, who was like, "Oh, no, I was a physical trainer," and people are like, "What happened to 10 years of your life?" You
Right,
know?
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't
Um,
think and I don't if there was one thing that I noticed too about her is that she seems to have this perception of herself where, like, she talks about, "I'm bubbly, bouncy person, even when I'm sleep deprived." I didn't see any of that. Like, I didn't get the impression that she's, like, this jovial, like, excited kind of individual, and so I maybe she's just doing that for interviews, maybe she'll be
yeah,
different when she's out on the island. I'm very curious to see how she is actually going to be once she's out in the island because I did not see the way that she was describing herself to be when she was talking in her interviews.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. Maybe she's already trying to rein that in, who knows? I don't think so. Now
I
I mean,
don't even.
it may just be the way people deal with others, compared to an interview. Um,
Sure.
but from a social standpoint, she said, "If I sense somebody else is struggling or more nervous than I am, I can put aside the way I'm feeling and engage with them, help them, give them the care that they need, which in turn helps me." Right now, the funny thing is, as she was out there playing, she didn't even realize. I mean, she saw Kenzie doing some of that with Ben, but she didn't
Mhm.
realize that it helped her win the season.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, Now, unfortunately, I don't feel like we got a lot more from her in terms of a strategy perspective. So it's hard for me to judge her in that aspect. She
Yeah.
did talk about how she had intended to practice fire making, but then ended up playing Baldur's Gate instead. So
What?
maybe
Priorities.
well, and maybe I'm seeing a theme here. Like she got out there, she's going to lie about her job, but I haven't gotten to that yet. I was going to practice
Yeah.
making, but there was this video game
Nah,
out there,
I got
you know.
distracted. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm not feeling great about Genevieve. I'm just I don't there is I know I've said, and maybe people will
mhm,
say I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth or whatever, where I'm like, the best laid plans, you can go into this game and have plans and then they don't come to fruition because you have to
mhm,
be able to adjust, right? But she doesn't even sound like she has any. So it's like, so there's not even like a backup plan to the plan that I'm going to have that you have to adjust to because she doesn't really have one. So maybe she thinks she's going to kind of come up with it on the fly. Like she's just going to make fire on the fly, I guess. I don't know. But I feel like there wasn't enough real, like, true prep put into how she is going to approach this game and what she's going to
mhm.
do. So
There
yeah,
was the
I'm
idea of prep, but
there
not the
was there
actual prep.
right. There was a
Uh,
conception of a plan.
yes. Uh, Now, speaking of fire making, her hot take, or as she admits, maybe not so hot a take, is she hates Final Four fire making. So maybe that
Yes.
also played into it. Um, she said, I feel like it just forces the players to get out better players early, and then it disadvantages great players like Jesse because it all comes down to making a fire. When
Mhm.
that doesn't really measure the best gameplay, which is what I would look for as a juror, the best gameplay as I interpret it. So even though I said, we didn't get much strategically out of her, at least she agrees with us. She's on the same page with us there.
I appreciate that. I'll give you a little check next to your name for
Yes.
also despising fire making at 4. Thank you.
Yes. Um,
I did make that little note, hates fire making. So
yes. And it all, that indicates she's looking for strategy, which is also
yes.
good.
Mhm.
We just don't know what her plan is.
Yes.
All right. We can move into Keyshawn, who is 28, an ER doctor in California, who says he's probably not the biggest super fan and only started watching in 2020 or 2021 at the beginning of the pandemic and immediately became obsessed.
Mhm.
He compared being an ER doctor to playing Survivor, telling Mike Bloom, you have to be aware of everything and know how to triage and know how to prioritize. You don't need to be in control all the time. You don't need to be the point person every single time. You just need to be aware of everything that's going on. And you need to know when to turn your attention and focus on something. He also added, you never know when something more pressing is going to come up in terms of strategy or something that's a detriment to your strategy, and you need to push that to the top of the list. So you can't get stuck in one game plan. You can't just be like, I'm focused on getting this person out. Now,
Yeah.
hopefully, this is an indication of his ability to do well at the third rule of being flexible. At
Mhm.
least he will be if he, follows through. As far as everything else he said about comparing the ER to Survivor, well, we plan to have Dr. Jeremy Faust back again as a guest later this season. So if Keyshawn is still there, I'm sure we'll be able to get some of his thoughts from one ER doctor to another.
I love this, but
Uh,
I have some concerns about Kashan.
okay.
Well, he's I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but it's almost like he comes across as he's, like, too kind and too nice, if that made I just I'm like, "Oh, he's just so sweet." Like, and I just feel like he's someone that might be taken advantage of because he has a sweetness about him that is very genuine and is great in the real world, but playing Survivor might not bode so well for him, and so that's just kind of like
Well,
the feeling I got from him.
he even said that. He said, um, in terms of, I mean, for us, rule 4, not letting your emotions control him, he noted he's very empathetic. He worried that someone might be able to pull his strings. He
Yeah.
knows he needs to separate game from personal life, but he worries it could be his downfall. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about for him. I really feel like he's someone who is just going to be he's going to struggle with that needing to be backstabbing and
mhm,
needing to lie a little bit, and I think that people will be able to play on his emotions. So I worry about that for him. I do
yeah.
appreciate his the comparison with being the ER doctor, I do think that there are some things there. I mean, high pressured
Mhm.
situations, you need to be able to think on your feet, but the emotional component of just playing this game, that's where I definitely have concerns.
Yeah. Now, in terms of other gameplay, he said he liked the way Carson played under the radar until he wasn't, gaining
Mhm.
trust while people didn't realize how strong a player he could be. The problem I see with this comparison is he's no Carson,
Yeah.
because I believe he said he would be honest about his profession while Carson was hiding his true field of study and that
Right,
he worked
right.
at NASA, was in the special program, etc.
Yeah.
I think it's more difficult to hide the threat level of a doctor than it is of a student.
Yes, 100%. Agreed.
All right, we could go to Rome, and I don't mean literally. We're not flying to Rome. We're moving to the player Rome. He is
Mhm.
30, an esports commentator who started
See?
watching, yeah, watching
Mhm.
Survivor in April of 2023. But these are esports. That's a little different. Um,
Still,
yeah,
there's a sports connection. It's
yeah.
anyway,
Um,
sports.
so he literally started watching just over a year before he found himself on Fiji. He
Yeah.
binged every season from April to July and said he crammed a whole lot into his mind about Survivor. But he views it as a positive because people who've been watching live since the start may have spottier memories. I don't know. They remember what they were watching when they were 4. Um, and it's all
Day
fresh
1
for
fan.
him. Yeah, it's all fresh for him. I
You
mean,
know, I have to stop you here because I am curious about that because I actually wrote that down, like, this is all very fresh. So, is that going to be a benefit for him because or will he be so locked into, "Well, I just saw that so and so did this, and I saw that so
yeah,
and so
but he
did that."
just saw everything. He
But
literally
that's what I
saw
mean.
everything. I don't know how you can keep it straight. I watched
That's my
I
yes,
watched 2
yes.
seasons back to back, and I start going, "Wait, which season did that happen in?"
Yes,
Um,
and I'm curious if that's going to negatively affect his ability to kind of keep it all straight because when you put so much into your head so quickly, so fast, if you can't keep it all straight, you might remember something as being good when in actuality it was bad because there's so many things that you're trying to remember at the same time.
I mean, it's possible, but when Rome dives in, he goes all the way. He didn't just watch. He said he's all over Reddit. He's on Twitter.
Yes,
He's
he's read
listening
everything.
to every single podcast, including specifically naming RHAP. So, side
Mhm.
note, Rome, if you're listening to this, hello. Uh,
Hi.
but um, yeah, so he has just like been a sponge absorbing Survivor, like
And maybe he's
all
someone
of
who's able to
Survivor.
do that. Yeah, like to keep it all straight.
Yeah.
And maybe he's someone who crams really well and then can ace the test and he'll know every
Hmm.
fact there is to know about Survivor. And if there's some challenge where they have to name all the seasons in order, he'll be able to do it. I don't know. But he is a very big personality too. And so there's a lot happening with Rome where it's like, I've crammed all this information, which means he's got to be an intense person. And then listening to him speak and watching him,
Yeah.
he is magnetic. So
You know,
it'll be interesting to see how his personality fits in with everyone else.
it occurs to me with the Survivor stuff. Maybe when he was growing up, he heard Rome wasn't built in a day, and he saw that as a challenge. He was like,
Right.
"Well, maybe not, but I'm going to build my Survivor knowledge in just a few months," And
Exactly.
so I'm sure
And
he's
then he's
never
gonna
heard that.
take over and he'll win
Uh,
and it'll be this whole thing.
yeah, because one thing that we frequently, I don't want to call it complain about, but at least mention is that the newer Survivor viewers who binge watch, they're not getting all of the outside commentary. They're not getting the
Right.
more intricate details. But he's done that too.
Yeah.
He didn't
But
just
could he
binge
keep it all straight? That's
uh,
the thing.
as long as he gets the high points.
Well, right,
Um,
because there are so many times that we've talked about the edit is missing things
right.
and this isn't included and you don't know that.
Yeah, but if
And
he's got Reddit up there while he's doing it,
but that's what
and
I'm saying. Like, can you
Twitter and
keep it all straight? Yeah.
yeah. Now, an interesting thing that he said that caught my eye immediately was he intends to play the game most like Cook Island's Ozzy and wants to be one of the greatest challenge beasts of all time.
Mhm.
My first inclination was, Well, I hope not, because Ozzy lost due to focusing so much time on providing and challenges and not as enough on strategy. But
I'm stopping you
yeah,
again because one of my notes, as soon as he said that, I wrote, "Uh-oh, Bloomberg."
yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
saying.
I mean,
Just
now
saying.
Rome went into a bit more detail, noting that Ozzy was missing the social game aspect that Yule had. Um, so I would say Rome is close, but not quite there in that term,
Yeah.
because I interviewed Ozzy 3 times back in those days. And you're not
Mhm.
going to find those interviews online unless you're really good at searching, because that website doesn't exist anymore. Uh,
Yeah.
Maybe I'll find a way to get those back somewhere, but I haven't yet. But anyway, each time I talked to Ozzy, he recognized that he needed to improve not his social game, but his strategic game. And then
Right,
each time
right.
he'd go back out there and do the same thing again.
Mhm. I
Um,
am intrigued too because he's the one who indicated that he has some secret sinister plans, things that have never been done before.
yes.
What is that?
Yeah. So he said he only told his fiance and sister, and one of them asked if you can actually do it. He said there's no rule against it. Now we've said before that it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. Kind of
Yes.
like when Sabaya used the tribal council fire to burn her
Yes.
candle, and we were like,
Right.
"You shouldn't be able to do that." And they're like, "Oh,
It's not in the
yeah,
rules.
yeah."
Yeah.
Um, uh, so yeah, if he can find something like that to do, go for it. I
But I'm
also,
so
though,
curious.
no offense, Rome, but I also encourage production to stop him if it's unfair, kind of like I thought the Sabaya situation was.
Right, right.
But that's the rules guy in me talking there. But
That is the rules guy. Mhm.
we'll just have to see. Um,
Very
you know,
intriguing.
in other areas, he said that his superpower would be his social game, but he also talked about outsmarting some of the others in the pregame by hiding what he was doing to prepare, uh while some of them were doing things out in the open that gave it away.
Right.
And as far as strategy, he noted that some people get big movitis, and they also brag, which he doesn't understand. Another aspect of strategy is he plans to follow Sandra's anybody but me strategy, and
Mhm.
doesn't want to get attached to other people like Tim was to his fellow Segas last season. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. Didn't expect that. As he said, in terms of the anybody but me strategy, you have to beat every single person.
Yes. Yeah.
The thing is, it's hard to say I'm going to be strong in the social game and also I'm willing to vote out anyone. Those two things are not easy to balance.
Well, and he's concerned though too with his overconfidence. So you have to kind of see how that all melds together, right? That
Right.
if he has this idea that I can be super social, but then I can still vote anybody out and it'll be fine. That might come from him just being a
Hmm.
very confident individual. Like that's not going to negatively affect me, which I'm trying to remember. I didn't find it on here. I don't know if maybe it just wasn't included, but was he one of the ones with the hot take about Russell Hantz, or was because I know there was at least
I don't
two
know. I
people.
didn't. I didn't take those notes because I don't even want to go into that. But yes, I think he was.
Yes, so,
Um,
and I just think that this is where that cramming in, might not
mhm,
do so well for him because there are certain parts of this game that kind of build over time and people create and change the way that they play the game from things that they've seen other people do
mhm,
and things that they shouldn't do, and so I don't know if he's necessarily going to have that level of understanding of how you need to move and shift because the game has moved and shift because he's just started watching it.
right.
So it is I but I'm fascinated by Rome.
Yeah.
I am definitely very fascinated by him because I do think he has a physicalness about him that will help him in the game as well. And but he's like this. I mean, he just goes.
Right.
I hope it doesn't become too much for anyone. But I am definitely interested to see how Rome does for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Speaking of going, he mentioned when it comes to idols, he's very interested in going to look for them. He said, I barely need to sleep. I have no problem looking for an idol in pitch black. I'm a longtime gamer. I'm used to sleeping on 4 hours and being good to go the whole day. Yeah, but you don't have, Mountain Dew and, Jolt Cola out there. But
Right.
um but he also said if there's even a crack of dawn, crack of sunlight, some cameraman's going to need to get up and follow me around. The thing Rome doesn't realize is just how completely dark it gets out there.
Ah,
Because
yes.
I remember we had that discussion before, especially with Carson, who said something
Mhm.
similar. And then he came back and he was like, "Oh no, that did not work. It was way too dark out there." And
It is so
this
dark.
is not like going around in the dark in a video game.
Yeah.
This is going around in the dark in a jungle.
Yes.
So
And
I
we were
I think
told,
he's
like,
going to be surprised.
yeah, like, listen, like, the first night we were out there, they're like, "Y'all better figure out where you're sleeping, like, right now, because once it goes dark, it's dark." And we were
Mhm.
like, "Oh, okay." And then you're like, "Oh, you weren't
Yeah.
kidding." Like, it is dark. So it is definitely, something to think about, that if you wanna go out idol hunting, you might have to also know how to make fire,
Yeah.
Genevieve. Just saying.
Um I do think Rome has some really good potential. He just
Yes.
like you said, maybe needs to rein in the excitement a bit.
Yes, just a little bit because it
Yeah.
might be too much.
All right. Next up is Saul. Sorry. Uh, better call him Saul.
Mhm.
He's 43, a medical device salesman for deep brain stimulation therapy equipment.
Right?
Uh, ori-
Fascinating.
yeah, originally from Oklahoma, now in Connecticut. He's another one who started watching in 2020 due to COVID. He somewhat oddly, to me anyway, says he'll play like Gabler because
Right?
they're both in medical sales and they have a strong ability to build bonds and have self awareness. I can't say that I generally equated Gabler's game with self awareness,
Me
but okay.
either.
Like putting the palm frond on people and stuff, but okay, he still
My
won.
god, I forgot
Um,
he did that.
yeah. Uh, he
That's
also throws
amazing.
in he'll play with the strategy of Adam and the charm of Tyson, as he intends to create one-on-one relationships with people. That is an interesting mix. Adam,
It is an
Tyson,
interesting
and
mix.
Gabler.
Yes.
Um, Saul talked about how he intends to play Survivor like the game it is, which is good. His hot take, which obviously isn't all that hot as far as we're concerned, is that he's ignoring his family's advice to not lie. He said, "Guys, this is a game. This ain't real life. So I'm going to deceive people." And of course, he's right about that, as it's
Yes.
laid out in the first rule.
I do love that he analogized that to playing Boulder Dash and just
Yes.
actually doing all the right
Yeah.
answers. Like, yeah, I love Boulder Dash. I will say, though, he's another one that struck me very similar as Genevieve, where like when he described himself in a particular way, it's like it doesn't match what I'm seeing. Like the way that he's talking about himself is not the person that I'm necessarily seeing on the
Hmm.
screen or what I'm hearing. He really makes it sound like he's this. I'm trying to find exactly how he just, but he seemed to act as if like he's got this like outgoing personality, and he's this individual who's like puts himself out there. And then when I watched him, listened to him, he was kind of like, it's very just like kind of like I'm too cool to care. And I just and I'm like I'm not seeing the way you're describing yourself. It doesn't seem to be matching. But again, maybe it's just the interview component,
Hmm.
and maybe that's just the way that he presents himself when he's actually being asked questions like this. But I don't know. I'm very confused about Saul. I'm very confused about Saul.
Well, one thing he said that was good was he talked about needing to be level headed when it comes to beware advantages, such that he's not just going to go, "Yep, I'm doing it." Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's good for the seventh rule. But
Right.
his take on idols overall was interesting. He said he's not planning on using them like a shield, but as weapons to target people. And he even thinks
Mm-hmm.
he'll play more idols for other people than himself. Now, there's a bit to unpack there. First, since he seems to have the idea that he's going to find like so many idols that he
So
has
many,
to,
all the idols.
yeah, that he has to like, I'll use these for you and this for me. And,
Yeah.
um,
He's gonna have all the idols, all
and,
of the trinkets.
yeah.
Maybe
And
this is a sign to all of the CBS production team. There's too many. When people
Yeah.
think that they have like 10 options to play at the same time, perhaps you're putting too many into the
Yeah,
game.
maybe.
Okay? Just saying.
Now, then there's the weaponizing part. It's hard enough to know when to use them to protect yourself. Using
Yeah.
them to go on the attack is even more difficult because you have to know who the target is so you can play it
Right.
on them.
Right.
You have to know who you want to get out. You have to get people on your side. You have to account for vote splitting.
Mhm.
I, sorry,
And
Saul, but
every
I'm
other
not.
advantage that this
Yeah,
person has over there.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not counting on you being successful in that area. So prove
No.
me wrong.
But
Um,
he has such a confidence that, like,
yes.
I think he truly believes that this is what
Oh
he's going to
yeah,
be able to
yeah,
do. That, like, yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna find all of the idols and I'm going to do all of these things. And again, it goes back to that you can have plans, but you have to understand that that might not actually be what happens. So this is where I get that kind of, I don't know what to think about him because he
Hmm.
might just be too confident in himself because it seems like he's had a great life and he's been able to be very successful and do a lot of things, but this is Survivor. So it might not, you might not be able to
Hmm.
just win with your, like, charm and your in your kind of attitude that you got. I it just there's something about it that I just can't put my finger on, but I was like, "What is his deal?" I don't know.
Yeah. Now you mentioned he's had success. Another area was he said he's no poker pro, but he's won over $200,000 playing poker
Right?
tournaments,
I
which is
mean,
definite
come on.
definitely way more than I've made. Hopefully, he told the IRS about that since he now has announced it
Since he just
nationally.
put it out there, yeah,
Yeah.
to the universe.
And
Like,
he
he could just
said,
lie.
yeah, right. He said, when you're playing poker, you have to take risks. You might lose, you might go home, but if you don't take those risks, you will absolutely never ever win a poker tournament. And so it's got to be the same thing here. I have to take risks. Now, here is the issue. I've mentioned this before. If you take a risk in a poker tournament and you lose, well, there's always another tournament. I mean, sometimes you
Yeah.
can rebuy to the same tournament. I literally played in a tournament where a very well-known pro rebought 6 times. He would
Mm,
just buy, shove all in. Up, okay, I'm buying again. And he ended up winning because he had the money that he could throw at it, where the rest of the
right, right,
people were like, well, I'm buying in once, maybe twice.
right, yeah.
Um, but that all makes it a lot less risky, much like the pro I
Mhm.
was just talking about. Um, and for those who may know, it was Fossil Man, Greg Raymer. Um, anyway, for almost everyone who plays, Survivor is a one time opportunity.
Yeah.
Pushing all your chips in the middle on a 50-50 coin flip
Mhm.
in a tournament, it might make sense. It almost never makes sense in Survivor.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. So, Saul better bring his Sauler power, and we'll see if he can find all of the idols.
Yes. Yeah, you'd think he would
Alright.
have had a sunnier personality for you. We got jokes, people. All right.
So many jokes. That was good. That was good. Okay,
Okay,
alright.
we can move on to Teeny. They are 24, a freelance writer, former tech consultant in New Jersey. Now, they've been a fan for a long time, have attended Survivor events, avid RHAP listener. So, another time, Teeny, if you're hearing this, hi.
Hi.
Uh, Teeny, what caught my eye, which has very little to do with Survivor, did an 18-mile unicycle race in the fifth grade. Now, as a juggler who used to know
That.
used to know lots of unicyclists, I admire that, especially since
That's
I could never unicycle myself. I never could get the
I'm
hang of it.
sorry, and she's complaining she's gonna be bad at puzzles, but come on, like, really? I you've got wow. That's impressive,
Yeah.
Teeny. That's impressive.
Now, uh,
Wow.
Teeny was, of course, another person who recognized Asia and was the one who told Mike, I would love to work with her. I have no intentions of telling anybody that she's an RHAP podcaster because this is who you mentioned earlier. That would reveal that I know who a niche
Okay, so there it is.
commentator of Survivor is. And if I'm trying to blow up her spot, I'd simultaneously be taking myself down too. But
Mhm.
Teeny would love to work with her, obviously. Quote, I'm a huge fan of RHAP. Now, that's an insightful point. not just the RHAP stuff, but
Mhm.
like you mentioned earlier, yeah, if you say something, then you blow yourself up. You know,
Yes.
um,
Mhm.
hopefully that will help with my RHAP alliance idea. The funny thing is that Teeny is the one who had a negative pregame opinion of Andy, but they're on different tribes, so there's plenty of time to iron that out. While Asia is on the same starting tribe, so that bodes well for both of them.
It really does. And I do think that Teeny is someone whose personality is captivating, but not too much. Like, they are very intriguing, and I appreciate that so much about Teeny. So I think that overall, Teeny and Asia will balance each other out
Hmm.
very nicely, I think, because I think Asia will be a little more out there and a little more kinda leading things a bit, and Teeny will be supporting that and the relationship. I just can see that
Well, I think also, and
coming
I
into a
didn't,
really great thing.
this just occurred to me because I was going to make a joke about I had mentioned Cerie adopted Izzy into the Fields family. And I was
Mm,
going to make a joke about Asia adopting Teeny into the Welch family. But
mm,
then it occurred to me, I think, and this is off the top of my head, I think Asia mentioned something about looking for a little brother type of person.
yes.
And I
Mhm.
also think Teeny said something about I might try to find a situation where I'm the younger sibling. So
Yes.
that would make the two of them fit together even better.
Perfection.
I think.
It would be
Um,
perfection. Yes.
And then, much like Asia, Teeny said their biggest superpower will be social relationship and the ability to make people feel comfortable. But Teeny also added they expect their strategic and physical abilities to be underestimated but sharp. Uh,
Mhm.
you mentioned Teeny practiced some puzzles like a good super fan and got good at fire making, so they didn't put it aside and play computer games. Um,
Exactly.
they also took the additional.
Genevieve.
Yeah, I'm just gonna clip out all the times you say Genevieve. I think that'll be a lot of work, but that'll be a funny video. Um,
Goodness.
Newman. um. Anyway, the interesting step that Teeny took was putting themselves in situations where they would have to interact with new, different people, which I think
Mhm.
that's a new twist on a way to study for the social aspect of the game and prepare for Rule 5.
Yeah, I think that that's a very it is a very new concept, and I think that that's another part of Asia that we can appreciate. She wants to get to know people.
Mhm.
And then Teeny put herself in a situation where I need to learn how to get to know people that I'm not normally around or
Yes.
familiar with. So I think that they will both be coming at that social part of the game in the same way,
Mhm.
and I think they'll be able to play off of each other very well. I'm feeling very good about this twosome. I hope that it
Yeah.
happens because I think it will be lovely.
Yeah, I think as long as nobody gets it in their head that Teeny will be weak in challenges, for
Yeah.
any reason, I think they'll do fine in the early goings. Uh,
Mhm.
so with that, my tribal prediction is if if Rome talks at all about his podcast listening, I could see him being drawn into part of the RHAP alliance with Asia and Teeny. If
Mhm.
that happens, they'll only need one more person to take control of the tribe. Um, I suspect that will be Keyshawn or Saul. Ugh. See, that solar power messes me up with the Saul. Um, and I think your friend, go ahead, say it,
Genevieve.
will end up on the outs. God,
I
don't take that personally if you're
No,
watching,
it's
by the
not
way.
personal. Like, listen, I she seems like a lovely human being, but as far as playing the game
I mean,
itself, I don't
if
think
you're
that
going to admit that you didn't fire me because you played a computer game, you got to
I
expect.
this is yes, I'm sorry. Like we all I shouldn't say we all. There's quite a few of us who don't like fire making at 4. But you still have to know how to make fire before you go out there. It just is a thing and you can't choose video games over making fire. But
There's
regardless, Genevieve, you
probably
seem like
not. There's probably not a video game challenge out there.
I'm gonna go with no.
Yeah.
You seem like a lovely human being, but yes, I agree. Genevieve is someone who I'm very concerned with in this particular tribe.
Yeah.
And I also am still worried about Keyshawn just because I don't want him to be unable to put aside his sweetness and his kindness
Mhm.
and just be cutthroat and have to play this game because he seems also like a lovely person. So this group will. This is an. I feel like this is a very strong group
Mhm.
of people. There's something about the red tribe that just seems to be really
Yes, I
kind of
agree.
popping off the page, and so yeah, I think that they will likely do well, and we probably will be seeing much of them for much of the game.
Yes. All right, and the final tribe is Tuku in blue. We'll start with Caroline, who is 27 and a strategy consultant, most recently in the Chicago area, Evanston, Illinois, going to Northwestern University for grad school. Originally from California, I'm not entirely sure where she is now. I didn't know if like her job was in Chicago and that's one reason she went to Northwestern, or her
Mm.
job was in California and she went all the way to I don't know. Anyway, normally, as I mentioned with Sam, I root for anyone who's associated with Chicago. But Northwestern is the University of Illinois' rival as our fellow in-state Big Ten college.
Can't have that.
And my brother went there, which makes it even
Can't
more of a
have that.
rivalry. Um, so, but still, for Caroline's sake, I'm willing to put that aside, in part because she's a strategy consultant, which to me sounds like what we do here, except we give it away for free.
Fair, but this could also I I hope it works for her because it could be something very similar to what we saw on who was our was it Annika was the planner? She's the planner,
Project manager.
project manager. She calls herself a planner. She wants to
Mhm.
be in charge. I hope that Caroline is able to realize that
Separate that.
strategy's great,
Mhm.
but you can't take over, you can't take
Yeah,
charge,
well,
and that might
right.
be a problem for her.
I don't know that it will be because she talked about how she's used to working in an environment where, like, yeah, she comes up with ideas, but it's the 50-year-old partners who make all the decisions in the
True,
meetings.
that is very true. So, perhaps she will be very good at supporting
Yeah.
and saying, "Hey, what do we think about this?"
Mhm.
And throwing in some tidbits of information and then letting other people run with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that will be what ends up happening. So, it
Yeah.
would be interesting to see someone who is a strategy consultant if they're really good at strategy, like on Survivor. I feel like that would be very fascinating.
Yes. Um, it's funny because there was a player on last season of Big Brother, again, who hid the fact that she was a oh gosh, was it a marketing strategist or a oh, now I had the term in my a brand strategist. And she was like,
Mm,
"Well, I don't
mhm.
want people to know because it has the word strategy in it." Well, one, she was terrible at strategy. And two, nobody's gonna think that because of brand strategy. You know, that
Right,
brand
right. Yeah.
they have nothing to do with each other. This
Right.
may be a little closer, but still working with companies.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
it's been Caroline's dream to be on Survivor since she was 5 years old, so she certainly knows the game. In fact, she knows it so well that her hot take is on point and agrees a lot, not just with us, but also with Rome, in saying so many of these big moves are stupid. They're not good for people's games. Just because something
Mhm.
is a big, flashy move doesn't mean it's a good move. I'm here for strategy. I'm here for smart gameplay. And so, yes, we applaud this thinking, and
Yes.
it goes
Thank
along
you.
well with Rule 2. Um,
Mhm.
Moving to rule 4, Caroline acknowledged that she's emotional, but what people won't expect is she's actually very strategic and logical, which of course makes sense given her job. She specifically said, "When I'm making decisions, I'm taking a step back and I'm stripping all the emotion. It's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good, but that's what I've had to deal with my whole life, and that's what I'm able to do." And that's what you need to do in Survivor.
Yes. And I do wonder though, because the work that she's doing is with these companies, and yes, you have to put your emotions aside, but you're dealing with a company. Here you're dealing with like people.
Mhm.
And that could be problematic for her because there might it might be very difficult to separate the two things out because it's one thing to be dealing with a Fortune 500 company
Right.
and the millions of dollars that are associated with that company and what their goals are as opposed to a human being that has children and a family and needs this money to survive. So they need to win. I mean, like that's a whole different world to have to dive into and then have that mindset. So that could be an issue for her because I don't know if you'll be able to separate those two things out as much as she would like to be able to.
See, it's interesting. I thought you were going in a different direction because I think her issue in dealing with people will come from her discussion about the fact that her job requires her to be blunt. She said, "You
Mm.
have to give feedback, you receive feedback, and it's just the way we operate. I'm very blunt with my friends. I'm very
Mhm.
blunt with my family. I operate under the assumption that we get to be honest with each other. I know it's with the best intentions and we move forward." But the thing is
No,
that
not on Survivor.
yeah, exactly. It reminds me, and I may have told this story before. Who knows? We've done a lot of podcasts. Um,
Yes, we have.
it reminds me of way back when a new lawyer started working at the agency I was at. And she had just come from a big law firm in Chicago where they had a similar attitude. You didn't pussyfoot around. You said what you meant, you gave
Mhm.
your opinion, and that was expected. But
Right.
she didn't realize that this was a different type of society where she came to work.
Mhm.
She was working with engineers and scientists, not big city type A law firm type people.
Right, right, right.
It took a while, and frankly, some people like me telling her to cut it out before she adjusted. She was not understanding why people were getting upset with her.
Yes.
Caroline doesn't have that kind of time.
Yes, she doesn't. And that is, I and they might have I think the comparison might have been made to Emily Flippin just in
Yes.
that kind of approach where you're going to
Mhm.
be completely honest and just say what's on your mind and think that that should be okay. But again, this is Survivor. And so real world versus survivor world, can't treat the two things the same. And so her line of work, her approach to life might not help her in this game as much as she necessarily hopes it's going to or thinks
Mhm.
it's going to.
Yeah. So I think even, you know, as long as she doesn't immediately come off bad in that way, I think she'll be good for a while.
I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
not feeling it.
Okay.
I'm
All
not
right.
feeling it.
All right. Well, let's move on to Gabe. He's 26 and a radio show host and political operative in Baltimore. Um, as a radio show host and political operative, one of the most likely to recognize John Lovett, but
Yeah.
um, he watched Survivor as a child, then more recently, fell off a little bit and then caught up with what he missed since then. Gabe
I'm
was
getting
another
one.
person I didn't get much from, which is
Well,
interesting because
listen.
he normally should be a talker, but he
Mhm.
he said his superpower is reading people. Now,
I'm like he's going to go right to it.
yeah,
Right to it.
yeah. He does wisely say he knows a big part of the social game is the ability to listen. But that reading body language and believing he could spot when someone is lying, I already talked about that. So I don't
Yes,
need to,
right.
you know.
Yes.
Um, Still, I would think that someone who works in both politics and radio should be able to get himself well situated pretty early and go from there,
Mhm.
as long as he doesn't jump to conclusions based on bad body language assumptions. I think he'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, I mean, he's not living presently enough, thinking too much about what's going on, what's going to come next. You kind of have to, though. You
Yeah.
always have to work through the permutations in this game. Like, if I do this, this could happen. If I
Mhm.
do that, that could happen. But you can't be living 5 days ahead. You have to be living very
Right.
much in the moment and present when you're playing the game. I didn't get a lot from him either, but I feel like he was someone that was spoken about by quite a few of the other players who were getting kind of a not great read about him
Mm.
just pregame.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if that's going to end up negatively affecting him either once he gets out there, but he did seem to be someone who was kind of on repeat and being described by others and
Okay.
things they've noticed about him.
All right. Well, we could move to Kyle, who is 31 and a construction
Oh,
worker in
Kyle.
Michigan. I don't know what that means. Um, Kyle is definitely focused on winning the money, which is good because we won't hear any. I'm here for the experience. I'm here to win a,
Right.
a, a million hearts.
No, I love that about I
From
love
him.
that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kyle, for like I
Um,
want the money.
right.
Yes.
But it seems to be his only reason, which it should be, but it worries me a bit because we want to see people playing to win, but you can't get hyper focused on it.
Yeah.
Like there was just a guy on the second season of Outlast. It came out within the past couple weeks, and it was
Mhm.
all he talked about. How he
Mm.
wanted people to work with him because of how much he needed the money. It got to be a bit tiring for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody well, and honestly, I feel like nowadays people don't in this survivor world we live in, people don't care anymore about that I really feel like the players that are out there, because there's so many of them that don't necessarily focus on the money,
Hmm.
that it's not one of those things that they are as concerned about. Like when this game first started way back when,
Hmm.
at the beginning of time when Sam
Day
was
one, day one,
day
Sam. Yes.
day one Sam, uh, like the $1,000,000? You going $1,000,000? Do you remember they used to have the chest with the money in
Only,
it?
yeah, only the first season. Yeah.
But
Yes.
like that's it was $1,000,000. Now it's like I want to be the sole survivor. It's
Right.
like it's shifted. And so I don't know if it would necessarily people would care so much if he's talking about the money. But what I do find very interesting about Kyle is that he's kind of this interesting mix. I feel like he's going to be very disarming because he doesn't come across as someone who's strategic. He doesn't come
Hmm.
across as someone, I want to be sole survivor. I want to win this money. I'm a blue collar guy. I build houses. Like this is what I do.
Hmm.
And so he might just be someone that no one really worries about because he's probably gonna be there. He's going to provide for them. He'll probably build their shelter, and I'm gonna do the challenges, and I'm going to do everything I need to do, and I'm not gonna be the strategist, and no one's gonna have to be worried about me. So I'm wondering if his personality will be very much like a JT his first season, where it
Hmm.
was just kind of just very disarming
Yeah.
and just a likable guy that everybody's just kind of like, oh, it's Kyle. Like Kyle's fine. We don't need to worry about Kyle, and maybe he can just kind of sneak through, but I don't know if he'll have the ability to actually strategize enough to get himself in a position where he could eventually win the game.
Yeah, I agree with you. He talked about how he traveled the country for over 6 years living in a van, so he submersed himself into different environments and cultures, so he could get along with almost anyone. He believes his kindness and social game will be his superpowers, but he also worries, he wants to see people happy, which, they won't be as he
Right.
votes them out.
Right.
So he's going to have to work on that fourth rule there. Of
Mhm.
course, he is not, of course, because not enough people believe this, but uh, on the good side, he is yet another person who agrees with us in terms of big moves being dangerous. He added, you always want to have a meat shield, which is interesting because his hot take was he wants to see strong players make it to the end rather than bringing goats along. Now, James
Mhm.
Jones loves that idea. He's been promoting that, for a while now.
Mhm.
And it could work in theory only if all the strong players absolutely agree. This is the problem.
Right.
It is
Yeah.
if all the strong players got together, or at least, the top three strong players, and said, we are going to go to the end. We have 100% faith in each other.
Mhm.
But nobody has 100% faith because as soon as one gets worried that the others are going to beat them, it all blows up.
Yeah.
So anyway, as far as Rule 7 goes, Kyle says he'll take any advantage, but wants it to be completely under the radar. He said he's a firm believer if you're going to have something of that ability in your pocket, you're the only one who needs to know about it.
Mhm.
Very good take there, too. So
Yeah.
overall, I think Kyle will stick around at least until the merge.
Mhm. I agree.
All right, well, we can move on to Sue, 59-year-old flight school owner in New York. And yay, someone older than me on this cast.
Look at
Um,
that.
she has watched since the beginning, and she can say that because she
She
was
can
already
say
an
that.
adult. Um, I
She
think,
has been watching from the
yes,
beginning.
yes.
Legitimately.
I think Sue is going to do a great job in the social game. I mean,
Yes.
honestly, based on what others have said in pregame interviews,
Oh
it
my
feels
gosh,
like she
everyone
started
loves
already.
Sue. Yes,
Yeah.
everyone loves Sue.
Um, I, I'm not sure about her when it comes to strategy. When she was asked what she'd value in an alliance partner, she said, we all know alliances are only temporary, so I'm not expecting much from anyone. We're all going to lie to each other. Now, she's right about the lying,
Mhm,
but not necessarily the part about us all knowing that alliances are only temporary.
mhm.
It's interesting that she said that so soon after watching Survivor 45, because not all alliances are going to last, but the best idea is to get one that will, as they showed there.
Yeah. Yeah, she's kind of a mix because I do feel like so many people were talking about her and how,
Mhm.
"Oh, I can't wait to meet her. I love her already. Like, she has the warmest smile. She seems so kind." And there was a lot of very positive things being said about Sue. So I do think that she's gonna find herself in a very good position just because she has already become so
Mhm.
intriguing to
Yes.
everyone that's met her thus far, and then you add to the all of the things that she's done and been able to accomplish, and I think that she will end up being in a good place overall just because she seems to have so many of the boxes checked as what she'll need to do moving forward. But again, how she'll end up developing that strategy as the game moves along. People liking you is going to carry you so far, but you need to also make those game moves in order to sit at the end and go, "This is why I should win."
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how that all kind of comes together for Sue because maybe she really will be able to utilize the likability
Mhm.
factor in the strategic factor as well.
Yeah, one area where Sue talked about that made me chuckle relates to the fourth rule. She said her emotions are her favorite part of herself, but every time in my life that I've made a decision based on my emotions, they've always been 100% incorrect. So I'm going to need to figure out how to get a hold of my emotions. I know that when I'm tired, when stuff happens, I have to check my emotions. Now, that went totally the opposite direction of what I was expecting because so many people will be like, "Whenever I make a decision from my heart, it's the right decision.
Right,
My
right.
emotions always guide me." And she was like, "No, mine always tell me the wrong thing."
Yeah, so
So,
she'll do the opposite when she's out
yeah.
there.
Um, so now, while Sue is obviously the oldest person out there, I think her social game will keep her around for a while. And
Yes.
they may be all she needs to stick around even longer. But she's she's gonna have to make sure she's not viewed as a weak challenge link or anything like that early on.
Yeah, but she looks jacked.
She does, but sometimes people get it in their head,
I
"Oh,
know, yeah.
oldest woman must
Sure,
not be good
sure.
at challenges," no matter what
Right,
they look like.
right, yeah. Mhm.
All they have to do is, like, one little slip up in the first challenge, no matter
Yeah,
how they look.
and we know people look for any reason to
Right.
take somebody out right away,
Yeah.
so for sure. Mhm.
All right, next up is Tiana, a 27-year-old flight attendant, from Hawaii. Um, I worried about her almost from the start of the answers I saw from her. Uh,
Yeah,
for example, she said she will win, quote, because I am smart, tenacious, cutthroat, socially aware, and have a magnetic personality. I have the ability to make people feel comfortable and can effortlessly make genuine connection with just about anyone. People have an easy time opening up to me, and I plan on using that intel against others. I want this more than anyone, and I'll stay up finding 1,000 idols if I have to. 1,000 idols, that's a lot.
that's a
Um,
high production, too many
yeah.
idols.
Um, so there's a lot going on in that answer.
There is
But
so
I
much going on with Tiana
Well, but I
just
don't
in
feel like any of
general.
it tells me much about her actual game plan. She listed off a bunch of stuff,
Right.
and all I got out of it was she expects people to tell her their secrets so she can use it against them, which, I mean, that sounds more like a Big Brother strategy than a Survivor
Yeah.
strategy.
I mean, she seems like an incredible person. It just like
Yes.
she's another one of these like I'm all like Rome. Like I wow, all of these things and all of these great qualities and she seems like she's going to be a lot.
Mhm.
And like I love her. Like I was like, wow, I loved listening to her and her talk about the just herself and different things, but I don't know if that is going to be enough to necessarily carry her through because she might I think it might have been Rob that said maybe she's just going to be too good to be true kind of thing where like you just see her and she's just so like it's like, wow, she's such a great person, but is someone going to see that as a threat? Because she's just so likable and she has all of these things about her. I don't know. I was
I don't think she'll make it that far. I just
but
have
that's what I'm saying.
too
Like
many
people might
worries. Well, I have even earlier than people considering her a threat, because like her answer and what she wants in an alliance partner, part of it was I value someone who's willing to make big moves, who's willing to play fearlessly with me, someone who's playing to
yeah.
win, not to lose.
Mhm.
We know what happens with those people. They make a
Yeah.
move way too soon when they didn't need to, and then they go out.
Yeah.
Uh, so I fear she's gonna be an early boot.
Interesting. Yeah, I have to look at who else. I mean, we're gonna be talking about TK. He's
Mhm.
also a very big personality, but I feel like those 2 might end up playing off of each other, and then if you throw Sue into the mix, I'm not as worried about her just because I do think that Tiana will be like she just has this thing about her personality that
Yeah.
she's kind of you kind of gravitate towards it, I think, and if they like you, then they're not necessarily going to be looking for a reason to get rid of you, and if
Mhm.
they don't think that you are too much of a strategist or too threatening, then maybe we're just gonna let you stick around, like I was talking about Kyle. If Kyle is just someone who's like, "I'm here to support you, and I don't seem to be too scary in the beginning," well, then why do we have to necessarily get rid of
Right.
this person?
Right.
So
All right. And finally, last but not least, we have TK, like you mentioned. He's
mhm.
31 and athlete marketing manager from Maryland, um, who another person who started watching when COVID hit. Um, but he likes the original Survivor better than the new era and
I
believes,
love TK
yeah,
for that.
I knew
Thank
you
you.
would. He believes you had
Oh,
to be more skillful due to the longer time frame. Now, I'm sure that a lot of people like you are nodding their heads when they say that, well, as well as a lot of other people getting very angry about it.
oh, I'm sure,
Um,
yes.
but in the end, it doesn't matter because he's playing New Era. He didn't have a choice in the
Mhm.
matter. Um,
Right.
TK has been through a lot beating a childhood kidney disease, so he isn't
Mhm.
too worried about being in the jungle. Plus, his job involves wheeling and dealing with different types of people, so he expects those skills to translate to the game and further thinks his social game will be his biggest strength, which is good because he doesn't plan to hold back on other parts of his game, like being a challenge beast. He
Yeah.
just kind of plans to social game his way out of any possible threat level that brings. Uh, I wish him luck, but once they get to the merge and a little beyond, you're not going to be able to social game your way out of being a challenge threat. I'm sorry. It just
Sure. Yeah.
people look at you and go, "Yeah, he's a nice guy. We need to get rid of him."
Yeah, he's gotta
Um,
go
he probably sees that a bit too, which is why he plans to grab every advantage or idol, beware or otherwise, that
because
he
there's so
can,
many.
yeah, he could find to help keep himself safe. I worry that if he starts doing that, it'll add to his threat level, not reduce it.
Mhm. Yeah. He is another big personality. He is someone who, like you said, has been through a lot. It's kind of like at this point, like he's doing it all. He's not going to let anything stop him. So I feel like his approach to the game is going to be very much like that. Like we talked about with Rome. Like it's going to be
Hmm.
go, 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 which could be problematic for him if it's too much. But I think his ability to be strong in challenges will be very necessary at the beginning. And as you said, once you get past the merge, is that going to be a focal point for people to want to take him out? I have a lot of good feelings about TK just in the type of work that he does with having to, the negotiations with the deals, that he might be very good at negotiating with other players about how to proceed with the game and who they want to vote out and things of that nature. So I feel like he's likely going to do well, and I'm curious if how he's going to manage to put it all together with that big
Hmm.
personality, the challenge component, the social skills. He's another one that I find very intriguing.
Yeah, the interesting thing is he recognizes that we've seen a bit of people turning too quickly on their allies. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that was fresh in his mind in the middle of Survivor 46. So he plans to play a safe game and only get aggressive when the time is right, which he said, is not when there's 11 people left in the game. So that's good.
Right.
I just don't know how you play a safe middle of the road game when you're also a challenge beast.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not all gonna balance the way
Right.
that he necessarily
Yeah.
wants it to. So,
Now being a challenge beast means, his tribe will almost certainly keep him in the pre-merge.
mhm.
But I worry about him after that.
Yeah.
So that takes us to our tribal prediction. Like I said, the only person I feel is in immediate danger, and I know I differ with you on that, is Tiana. In
Yeah.
terms of going the furthest, I'm going to take a leap of faith and say Sue.
Well, I think Sue's gonna do great. I agree with that assessment, but I have my concerns with Caroline. I really
Okay.
do. I think that she's someone that's going to not be able to hold back, and I don't think that there's necessarily going to be any any person on this tribe that would say, I'm going to step up. And she wasn't someone that I think was mentioned at all pregame from all of the descriptions. So I don't, I think Caroline's going to be in a tough spot here.
All right. Well, let's get wrap things up here with our overall predictions. First out, overall, I worry about the Gata tribe, and I find myself going back to Annika again. I don't know why. I just have a bad feeling about how she'll do. I think a lot of it goes back to me just not getting much from her bio and interview. And what I did get makes it seem to me that she's relying too much on those project manager skills translating, which I'm not really sure they will. So my official first pick, or not first out pick, is her.
See, now I've put myself in a really tough spot because I have to stick my hand in a bag of rocks and pick a winner, right?
Well,
So
first
I
you have to,
might,
yeah.
but this is the problem because you've already have your winner pick. Excuse me. So you, of course,
I
can be
mean,
like, well,
you could do a bag of rocks for first out too.
ooh, oh, this is a great idea. Hang on one second. I think that's hysterical. But
Okay.
I will
Why don't you?
pick.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think you're going there. Why don't you tell us who you would have picked, and then who your
Yeah.
official one is.
So I think Rachel. There's just something about Rachel that I keep coming back to as well. I'm concerned about her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that tribe I have worries for that particular tribe too. So I'm going to go with Rachel as the first one out.
Okay, so you're not going to pick for that. All right. As far as my winner pick, in other seasons, let's be honest here, I'd be debating who to go with. There are several players this season who could have risen to that level, from Andy to Rome to Teeny to Sam. But let's face it, the minute I saw Asia was on this cast, I knew who I'd be picking. That
I
some
knew it.
some seasons I debate. No, it's not just out of RHAP podcaster loyalty or the fact that she's the first Survivor player I've ever podcasted a couple times with before they played.
Mhm.
I really do think she has the skills to win. So that
Yeah,
just
I
all
think she's going
piles
to do
on
great.
top. So Asia is my winner pick, as I'm sure she will be many in the community. All right, we have a bag. It looks
We
like a
have a bag.
Starbucks bag.
We have a Starbucks bag.
And we
But
have rocks.
it's full of all of the rocks. My son put all of their names in here. I have not
Okay.
looked. We're gonna take this around. Sorry, it's very loud. It's next to my microphone. My father told me, don't ever pick the first rock you touch, which is exactly what I did
Hmm.
when I was out there. So I've learned my lesson. So we're not doing that. We're swirling. As my father said, you need to swirl. Okay. I'm gonna go with this guy. All right.
Drum roll.
You ready? Rome.
Rome, that's a good pick.
That is a good pick. I'm excited about that. So Rome, you're my guy.
I
We'll
mean,
see
Rome
what
was
happens.
probably in your mind anyway as a possibility.
That was definitely I'm very happy. I can take a Rome. So this is
Okay.
you're my rock. You're my rock, Rome. Here we are.
Hopefully this will be a winning rock for Rome.
I know
Not yes.
Rome, I'm gonna apologize now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We know how this can go. But
Yes.
Rome, you're mine. All right, there we are. We're gonna keep my little Rome rock right there. This is what we're
Yes.
doing.
All right. Well, we're done. But the rules that we talked about in that preview, I want to mention, come in a shorter and much more colorful version in poster form. You can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down, get to the poster, click on it, order it, and our expert shipping department will get one right out to you.
I don't know if it's expert, but we try really hard.
I mean, it's an experience now for, it's been a couple years. So I would say you're an expert. You can keep scrolling and you find the poster t-shirt, which is exactly what I'm wearing. And keep scrolling and get the checklist t-shirt as well. So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed for all of that.
Yes. Now, should we talk about how people can find us?
Yes, absolutely.
Very well. So I am I'm on Twitter at Jessica Lewis 89, and I have taken a bit of a sabbatical. I haven't been on very often, but now that the season is beginning yet again, you will see much more of me on Twitter. And David Bloomberg, on the other hand, is a nonstop social media guru. He is on everything you can imagine and then some. So much so he has created he has a page He has a massive page with all of the things and places that you can find him. So I will defer to you, David, to talk about your link tree.
Yes, you can find my link tree at linktree/David Bloomberg, and there's a dot before the EE in that URL. Or you can find me directly on Twitter and Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg, and on Threads as at David Bloomberg TV. On the video platforms, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, I'm also at David Bloomberg TV. I have been, all summer long, been posting 3 or more videos per day at each of those locations. Uh, Obviously, they've mostly been about Big Brother, both the show and the live feeds, along with some from. I mean, when it was on, there was Claim to Fame was on there, and the Anonymous is still on there. With, in case you don't know what that is, Sandra's daughter Nina, who was on a couple seasons of Australian Survivor, she's on the Anonymous. There's I've had a couple from Outlast. I mentioned that show. I'm getting ready to post some from The Circle. And obviously, there will soon be some from Survivor 47.
Yes, there will.
So, yeah, again, check out my biggest following right now is YouTube. I have over 36,000 subscribers on YouTube. So check me out there. On TikTok, I just passed 8,000. So
Look
either
at
way,
you.
at David Bloomberg TV.
Excellent. Well, are we thanking people now?
Well, first I want to mention other things that we're doing.
Oh,
I
okay.
mentioned that I am, of course, doing Why Blank Lost double duty, and with Big Brother still on. So I podcast with Big Brother 21's Ovi Kabir. In fact, it popped up on my Facebook memories yesterday that yesterday was the 4th anniversary of the first time Ovi appeared on Why Blank Lost. He was our guest during Big Brother All-Stars when you were still co-hosting Big Brother Why Blank
That's
Lost.
fantastic.
Now,
yes.
Unfortunately, Facebook has this thing where they pop up memories like at the end of the day. No, pop those up at the beginning of the day. So
Yeah,
it
Facebook,
popped up at
come
the
on.
end of the day. I had already recorded our Why Blank Lost for Big Brother with Ovi afterwards. So it was too late for that. But of course, you can find that podcast. Why Quinn Lost. You can find that and all the other ones from Big Brother. Those are already out there. I will also be appearing in coming days and weeks on a few other podcasts. I'll be once again co-hosting the Tradar podcast. This time it'll be covering the Traders Canada. So that'll start in a couple weeks. I also appear somewhat regularly on the Truth Unrestricted podcast, which is definitely not an entertainment podcast. We do sometimes talk about reality TV, but it's usually in other contexts and usually talks about like politics and science and other philosophical matters.
I will not be doing any of those podcasts.
That's right, because you have other work to do.
I unfortunately have so much work to do, but
yes.
I am very happy to be back doing this with you, David Bloomberg. This is quite lovely. I'm excited for this season, 40 several. It'll be lovely to discuss all of the players each week. So I'm looking forward to it. And we have what appears to be hopefully, keep my fingers crossed, a great list of people joining us throughout the season. So that will be
we're
lovely as
working on
well.
that. So,
Mhm.
I do want to mention that in the premiere episode, we will have Jake O'Kane as our guest. So we
Who
are
was my
looking
winner
forward.
pick?
Who was your winner pick? Wow, I just looked down and there's a giant spider crawling right next to me. Okay.
Oh, no.
Anyway, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. You can get access to all the special podcasts that are just for patrons, plus the Facebook groups and Discord. So support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Also, make sure you're subscribed to all of the reality TV RHAP Up podcasts by going to robhasawebsite.com/RHAP Ups feed and selecting your podcast service of choice. You'll find all the great content, all the versions of Why Blank Lost. You'll find the B&B, Survivor International, also podcasts on a number of other shows and topics.
Yes. And now I would like to thank everyone. And I should definitely thank RHAP in general, because listen to all of the lovely things that is being put out for all of you who are in the underbelly world. Scott St. Pierre for all of the editing that you do, not only for the Why Blank Lost podcast, but all of the incredible content that you just heard about. And also to thank you to Jessica Sterling, because she also is involved in the editing process as well with RHAP. So thank you for that. And thank you to the entire staff and team with RHAP, because really it is incredible at the amount of content that is being put out and the amount of work that is being put into producing all of these podcasts for you, in addition to all of the extra components of RHAP. And we just appreciate it so much. So thank you to all the listeners for supporting not only this podcast, but all of the content. And thank you, David, for, as I said, being patient with me throughout my very busy schedule here. But this has been a great time. I'm excited to be back here with you, and I look forward to a great season of Survivor.
Yes, and thank you, Jessica. It's great to have you back. Just it feels right. We're ready to go with Survivor
Yeah,
again.
it
So,
feels good. Like this.
so all right, we will see everyone in roughly a week for the first official episode of Why
That's
Blank
right.
Lost with Jay Cocaine. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.